Welcome back to our channel where we provide updates and undisclosed narratives on the royal family. We provide you with the exciting news Queen Camilla left Buckingham after her secret vault was revealed. The theft and in some cases, sale of priceless artifacts from the royal collection was the subject of a recent expose that detailed a major issue inside the British monarchy. Reports from within the palace and the media led to the controversy's emergence in the months after Queen Elizabeth II's death, casting suspicion on Queen Camilla and setting off an intra-family feud, including Princess Anne. The incident, which was pieced together from many sources, posed a serious threat to the legitimacy of the monarchy and changed the power dynamics within the House of Windsor. It is most helpful to place the story in its immediate institutional and physical context, which consists of the royal vault's restricted confines and the administrative machinery that controls who may enter them. When palace employees started to wonder where a number of important jewels had gone, tensions started to rise. These were no ordinary trinkets. Rather, they had strong mnemonic connections to two of the most iconic personalities in British royal family history, Diana, Princess of Wales, and Queen Elizabeth II. Given the royal collection's stringent traditions, thorough audit schedules, and advanced security procedures, such reports seemed unlikely at first. The rumors persisted, however, so it was clear something was amiss and needed further investigation than what was covered by standard inventory practices. The items that were said to be missing were an emerald choker that Princess Elizabeth often wore when she was young, a sapphire brooch that had belonged to Queen Victoria, but was now closely linked to Diana, and a pearl bracelet that was strongly associated with Diana's public persona. From archival to family to ceremonial to popular, each item has its own unique meaning. Specific and disturbing circumstances surrounded their disappearance from inventories at a time when the kingdom anticipated the continuation of custodial practice. None of them were listed as on loan for exhibition, being conserved or valued, or having accompanying documentation indicating a legitimate transfer. A small but powerful group of palace employees were especially alarmed by these inconsistencies, which raised concerns about leadership and supervision. The inconsistencies were more than just administrative mistakes for Princess Anne, whose public persona has always been defined by her sense of duty, meticulousness, and custodial responsibility for the continuation of the royal family's line. As relics kept in trusteeship on behalf of succeeding sovereigns, and more broadly the country, the jewels symbolized physical continuity of Elizabeth II's reign. The supposed deletions were an insult to protocols, intergenerational trust, and institutional memory, since Anne had always seen herself as a guardian of the integrity of the institution. Taking such items without permission, particularly during a time of change when the Queen Consort's detail was reassigning custodial duties, was in Anne's view a violation of both protocol and the implicit covenant between the crown and the people. According to many who know the Princess Royal well, she responded with the controlled thoroughness that has always defined her public life, a determination that was more meticulous and procedural than demonstratively furious. The feeling that stewardship had been undermined was at the heart of that worry. The situation was further complicated by signs that the disappearances were neither unintentional nor caused by harmless misplacing. There was a clear trend wherein the focus seemed to be on historically and monetarily significant artifacts that were not as immediately recognizable as the crown jewels, but were nonetheless fundamental to the monarchy's visual and narrative fabric. It seemed more like deliberate action than administrative sloppiness, given the date so soon after the change of reign and the stealthy way in which certain artifacts were recorded as relocated. Under Elizabeth II's reign, the collections were handled in a more casual manner. The late Queen's extensive personal discretion had eroded limits that were from a strictly legal standpoint more inflexible. Queen Camilla became the target of mounting suspicion as these factors came together, and the issue escalated into a showdown over custodianship, power stewardship, and the boundaries of personal prerogative. The intricate symbolic, legal, and cultural significance of royal jewels is essential to comprehending the stakes. Royal jewels from the United Kingdom are not a homogeneous collection, but rather exhibit a great deal of historical variation in their classification. There are several procedures regarding the custody of the crown jewels, which are regalia used at coronation and state rituals and kept in the Tower of London. The crown jewels are considered inalienable and belong to the crown. In contrast, there is the Royal Collection, which is among the world's most important art collections and contains thousands of items, including priceless jewels. Artifacts housed in the Royal Collection are not directly owned by the sovereign, but rather held in trust for the benefit of the nation and their successors. The Royal Collection Trust is responsible for their administration, and the collection is subject to conservation protocols, loan agreements, and inventories. After all, that every royal has their own private collection of artifacts, including family heirlooms, presents, and privately acquired pieces of art. Similar to the extensive private collection of Queen Elizabeth II, Diana's jewelry included both diplomatic gifts and items that she had bought privately, as well as inherited pieces from her family. Some of Diana's jewels were left to her sons in trust after her death, with the clear stipulation that they might be worn by members of the family under certain circumstances. The system was problematic because of the combination of private ownership, dynastic politeness, and public expectation, yet it was traditional in some aspects. During her lengthy reign, Elizabeth II often utilized pieces from both parts of the category semi-interchangeably. For example, she would choose a brooch from her personal collection for a state event, or she might lend a piece from the royal collection to a member of her family for a public appearance. The lines between national trust property and private or dynastic property were more blurred as a result of these tactics, which were carried out under her unchallenged authority and aided by her very long memory and meticulous administrative attention. The late Queen's decisions, even when driven by her own interests, served as de facto policy due to the fact that they were uncontroversial due to her power alone. The uncertainty that had been accepted throughout her reign became contentious after her death and the reorganization of custodial procedures that followed the coronation of a new king and queen. Conflicting views on who has the power to authorize what in the home between the queen consort and other officials like the keeper of the royal collection or the master of the household became more noticeable than they had under Elizabeth II. Things linked to Diana had an even stronger emotional impact. More than just a pretty item, Diana's pearl bracelet had become an icon of her own style and a point of popular reference. She was also linked to sapphire and diamond jewelry that symbolized an enduring elegance. To the general population, these gems represent more than just wealth. They serve as memorials to a cherished individual and a means of processing loss and remembering. The items have sentimental value for Prince William and Prince Harry, Diana's sons. They are symbols of their mother's private grief that have gained prominence in public discourse. As a result, there is certain to be a lot of public and private emotion involved in deciding how to handle Diana's legacy, which includes caring for her jewels. Because the artifacts serve as both family heirlooms and national mnemonics, any perceived inappropriateness or contempt for them is likely to elicit an excessive symbolic response. The subsequent concrete reports were framed within this framework. Rumors at first might have been written off as administrative chaos during the delicate change of monarchs, but things quickly got out of hand when artifacts that looked suspiciously like missing heirlooms started showing up in auction catalogs around the world. When these things started popping up for sale, the focus shifted from possible mismanagement to the possibility of the willful destruction of cultural artifacts. Assuming these reports are true, the transfers in question would constitute more than just an economic wrongdoing. They would also constitute an attack on the institutional claim that the monarchy has to the nation's property, which is based on custodial control, clear provenance, and transparent documentation. The first concrete sign of trouble, as later reports showed, did not come from institutional auditing, but from Catherine, Princess of Wales's careful practice. Catherine has worn jewelry that belonged to Diana for a number of years now as a public display of reverence and familial continuity, using it as a kind of symbolic continuity. According to insiders who were privy to subsequent events, the red flag was raised when Catherine asked for a particular sapphire and diamond engagement ring. Although the brooch was supposed to be included in the safe vault inventory palace, personnel were unable to find it, despite its fame from Diana's attendance at a royal dinner in the 1980s. An audit of official records revealed that the brooch had been signed out without a specified return date or purpose. At first, it was thought to be a simple administrative error. However, when asked again, the answers were unclear or evasive, which raised doubts over whether or not procedures were followed. This prompted the Princess of Wales to softly peruse historical images, which she then compared to vault inventories of other garments she had worn or was considering. A pattern of discrepancies became apparent. Certain things were missing from their assigned spaces, and there was no evidence to explain why. At the same time, the vague memories of long-term palace staff started to come together. A subordinate footman who had just been let go allegedly told an old co-worker that he had been given many missions to bring velvet-lined cases to Mill House, Queen Camilla's private house in Wiltshire. He asserted his knowledge of the contents and the ability to identify Diana's pearl bracelet. A current palace employee also noticed a number of delivery slips pertaining to items from the collection. Although the slips were marked authorized, the authorizing signature belonged to Queen Camilla, a clear break from tradition, as the master of the household or the keeper of the royal collection would normally be required to authorize the relocation of important household assets. When combined, these stories hinted at a change in the traditional line of custody. Worry intensified as internal data corroborated exterior signs. An emerald choker from the Victorian period, which was last seen on Queen Elizabeth II in a picture from the 1950s, was described and shown in an auction catalog from a Monaco specialized house. Not long after that, an auctioneer in Geneva had advertised a sapphire necklace whose history matched that of a similar piece in the royal collection. The timing of these postings matched suspiciously with the discovery of inventory gaps at the palace. However, precise identification was made difficult by catalog images, reproduction quality, and auction house provenance assertions. Such coincidences were concerning and necessitated more investigation in the art market, where provenance and documented chain of custody are of the utmost importance for legal and reputational reasons. Dates, descriptions, staff memories, and picture comparisons were all part of the secret dossier that the Princess of Wales started to compile about apparent anomalies. Prince William reportedly reacted with extreme anxiety when she presented this circumstantial information to him. No longer were these artifacts just artifacts of antiquity, they were for him emblems of memory and continuity within his family. It was very unsettling to think that these priceless artifacts might be seen as disposable or taken by private individuals, since it implied a separation between individual feelings and the duty of the institution. The story started to seep into public domains as these internal initiatives advanced. As a result of members of online royal watching forums doing their own research and comparing auction ads with historical images, paired comparisons were quickly shared. The public's knowledge was expedited by the ability of digital networks to magnify visual comparisons, such as side-by-side photos of antique portraits and auction catalogs. Popular hashtags like Odachinanan, Where Are the Jewels, and Protect Diana's Legacy helped spread the word well beyond the usual realm of experts. Graphic evidence and conjecture shared on social media sparked sarcastic reactions and memes that not only made the idea of missing national treasures seem ridiculous, but also made it easier for lay people to follow the dispute. What started out as a little administrative disagreement quickly became a widely circulated accusation concerning responsibility and ethics due to the mechanics of viral dissemination. The claims were bolstered by public opinion surveys. According to one poll, only under 15% of people have faith in the palace's claims that all royal treasures are safe. Almost two-thirds of those people think the gems were taken or damaged on purpose. These numbers, even with the qualifiers about the samples used, showed how weak institutional trust is. A sense of institutional loyalty and a knowledge of abnormalities captured long-serving staff members inside Buckingham Palace. The restructured position of a senior archivist sparked rumors of internal silencing after he allegedly voiced concerns about missing items. The move was widely seen as a warning sign inside the organization. Princess Anne, who had previously chosen to investigate instead of remain silent, found that these demands simply served to strengthen her determination to go on with meticulous verification instead of public denunciation. Princess Anne began an informal but systematic investigation when she was confronted with a mountain of circumstantial evidence and institutional denial. Instead of asking for an external inquiry right away, which may have led to permanent public exposure, she used loyal, experienced staff and trusted contacts to back up her allegations. Her investigation was more of a meticulous compilation of documentation and testimonial evidence gathered outside of the royal bureaucracy than a forensic examination carried out by independent authorities. The approach betrayed an awareness of the delicate nature of family disputes, as well as the need to establish a foundation of evidence before moving further with official channels or going public with the matter. With the help of a retired equerry who knew palace procedure, a senior archivist who had been sidelined after voicing early concerns, and an ex-lady-in-waiting who had knowledge of the late Queen's personal collection, Anne assembled a small group of trusted current and former staff members. They collaborated on a strategy to compare royal shipping logs and ledgers with auction house records and catalogs from prestigious worldwide auction houses. An item that had been noted as missing from the vault in March turned up for private sale in Monaco in May, and a sapphire necklace that had been marked as blank in April turned up in a Geneva catalog in June. All of these correspondences were specific enough to withstand easy denial. The matching dates and detailed descriptions of the jewels mountings and other identifying markers in the historical photos supported the idea that the collection was being examined and in some cases offered for sale. Keeping in mind that any overt action that may lead to public revelation could do irreparable damage to the family. William and Catherine cautiously backed Anne as she managed the internal investigation. Catherine persisted in gathering photographic proof connecting auction objects to historical pictures via meticulous visual comparisons that highlighted distinctive features, such as gemstone cutting settings, trademarks, and detectable repairs. Concerned about inventory anomalies, Prince William, in his role as heir apparent, demanded official answers from top household personnel. In accordance with standard procedure, he anticipated that the caretakers of the home will provide documentation reasons. Constantly promising to execute the necessary paperwork, the justifications he got were vague and referred to routine appraisals, security reviews, and temporary loans as causes. According to those on the inside, these explanations weren't detailed enough and were becoming more and more unsustainable as more and more evidence from outside sources supported their claims. The investigation came to a critical crossroads when two very important lines of evidence were uncovered. First, there was the shipping paperwork that allowed the private Swiss evaluation business to take many jewelry boxes from Buckingham Palace. The pieces were moved for evaluation, according to the receipts, but there was no mention of loan or display, and no records later on verified their return to the vault. Queen Camilla's signature was on the documents. There was a chain of custody that went unchecked by established institutions, since these receipts were there. The second one was an email thread between a private secretary linked to Queen Camilla's household and an appraiser situated in Geneva. It may have been more damning. The objects described in the communication were clearly not part of the royal collection, but their appraisal and possible market placement were addressed in the same vein. The range of possible reasons for the object's disappearance was significantly reduced by the combination of documentation evidence, which included signed transfer papers and email contacts that indicated a business objective. With this information in hand, Princess Anne requested a private meeting at Clarence House with King Charles and Queen Camilla. She organized the data in a neat file, which included staff testimony, signed shipment receipts, copies of appraiser emails, and unusual ledger entries rather than insults. According to many in attendance, she acted in a professional and controlled manner with the intention of laying out the facts and inviting inquiry rather than inciting personal animosity. The delicate nature of family feuds and the difficulties of bringing institutional claims against the Queen Consort while she is in office were both highlighted at the discussion. Attendees said that Queen Camilla's answer was a strong rejection. She denied any wrongdoing and said the gems she had handled were being routinely appraised for an inventory update after Elizabeth II's death. Accusing Princess Anne of harboring a grudge stemming from old animosities within the family, she asserted her right to administer the collections as Queen Consort. Camilla went on to suggest that the Princess of Wales was using story manipulation to boost her own status and discredit the consort. The argument became a battle of power and legitimacy, with personal animosity and opposing narratives of propriety becoming central themes in the counter-accusations. A handwritten letter from Queen Elizabeth II's final years, which Princess Anne presented, escalated the clash. The late Queen made it clear in that intimate message to her daughter that she wanted Anne to personally watch after the preservation of certain priceless artifacts. A crucial instruction pertaining to Diana's jewelry was included in the letter: never be removed from the royal collection or otherwise disposed of without the full and public consensus of both her sons. The tone of the letter was a mix of familial intimacy and clearly stated custodial instruction. The document's existence changed the tone of the conversation. According to onlookers, King Charles was clearly moved at seeing his mother's legible handwriting and the precision with which she had instructed him. He kept mostly to himself during the conversation, which may be seen as a sign of his internal conflict between his sister and his wife, as well as between his filial obligation and his institutional responsibilities. Attempts to regard the disputed goods as discretionary were hampered by the letter, which served as a type of final testament. Although the gathering of evidence at Clarence House did not result in a resolution, it did signal the moment at which it became hard to contain. The substance of the dossier rendered secrecy untenable, and leaks and media inquiries were already increasing. Thus, the private encounter was the last anxious moment before the matter became public knowledge. The household was now confronted with the unpleasant task of either continuing with internal adjudication, which might lead to further leaks, or admitting to a public conflict among senior royals, which may lead to widespread scrutiny and the erosion of public trust. The scandal exploded into the public eye the moment it broke. The front page of a prominent Sunday tabloid carried the news with a headline that presented the tale in direct, unfiltered language. The article described the disappearances in great detail, using unnamed palace insiders and mentioning that comparable goods had shown up in international auction catalogs. The article's reproduction of passages from the stolen handwritten letter from Queen Elizabeth II to Princess Anne, which the royal household saw as the first proof of the late monarch's intentions, was the most devastating part. The editorial decision to highlight the private letter increased the tension and highlighted the gravity of the situation. Using contrasted images, a picture of Diana wearing her pearl bracelet next to an image of a nearly similar item from an auction catalog bolstered the presentation. The visual comparison prompted an instantaneous deduction, and the symbolic impact was immediately apparent to a large audience because of this. Publications emphasized these visual juxtapositions, turning problems of technical provenance into a story of institutional treachery and family malfeasance. Public discourse veered toward moral judgment as the rapidity of news and the abundance of side-by-side comparisons made nuanced accounting impossible. A strong and immediate public outcry ensued. Protests were staged outside Buckingham Palace with signs demanding the return of the objects and referring to Princess Anne's custody proceedings. Hashtags for the discussion quickly multiplied, and it quickly became viral. Segments shown on television and online contrast recordings of Queen Camilla ignoring reporter questions with video of Princess Anne standing firm. The media often portrayed Camilla as combative and evasive, whereas Anne was seen as obedient and unwavering. In a statement issued from his California house, Prince Harry cited portions of his mother's private letters from the 1990s, which when published in the press were interpreted to support a storyline of appropriation and resentment. By exposing such personal details, the controversy's moral aspects grew beyond concerns about inventory and into the realm of alleged disrespect toward Diana's legacy, further inflaming public reaction. Domestic indignation was exacerbated by international publicity. The controversy was given a snappy suffix by newspapers and broadcasters across North America and Europe, drawing comparisons to political scandals and governance failures. This demonstrates how emblematic instances of elite misconduct can become the vocabulary of modern scandals. Among the most viral royal scandals of recent years, the article attracted an estimated audience of millions within 48 hours. Since the legitimacy of the monarchy is largely dependent on public impressions of its governance and honesty, the rapid and extensive coverage posed a threat to both the people's and the institution's reputations. Aides said that King Charles was under mental and physical stress. The weight of the documented evidence eventually overwhelmed his efforts at discreet crisis management, which included shielding the Queen Consort from the full force of public opprobrium and pleading for calm. It is impossible to challenge the authority of a sovereign who leaves unambiguous instructions in the court of public opinion, as the late Queen's letter had been decisive in influencing public judgment, as conceded privately by courtiers friendly to the household. The political players also paid attention. Some in the opposition used the scandal to call for more openness in the management of royal funds, while constitutional experts pointed out the difficulty of resolving such conflicts in bodies that aren't subject to traditional parliamentary control. Public engagements by Queen Camilla were more difficult. Her furious denial recorded on video was replayed and became the subject of ridicule and criticism when she was once challenged by a reporter who asked her directly whether she had taken the jewels from the late Queen. In contrast, Princess Anne's reputation took a dramatic turn for the better once she was widely acknowledged for her role as a committed defender of cultural traditions. One broadsheet editorialized that Anne's determination on responsibility had preserved faith in the crown, while silence may have destroyed it. The editorial commentary lauded her perseverance. Images of the Princess of Wales wearing Diana's jewels kept circulating, adding to the impression that she was a respectful guardian of the late princess's legacy and drawing sympathy for her. Thus, public support for the individuals seen as safeguarding institutional integrity was solidified by the media's moral calculation. There were serious ramifications for the institution. Reportedly, the royal vaults got famous antiques back from appraisal businesses, but the trust gap that the scandal created was much more difficult to heal than the relics themselves. Support for Queen Camilla has dropped significantly according to public opinion indicators. A large majority of people trusted Princess Anne's explanation, but polls taken soon after the event showed that her popularity ratings plummeted to record lows for a senior royal. During the same time that Anne and the Prince and Princess of Wales experienced an increase in public esteem, William and Catherine were seen as stewards of the monarchy's continuity due to their combined behavior during the crisis, which was seen as evidence of steady, forward-looking leadership. On the inside, a rebalancing of allegiances and power was prompted by the aftermath. Those in the royal family's inner circle, who had previously worked closely with the Queen and her husband, allegedly started to withdraw their support. The Prince and Princess of Wales's household and Clarence House began to communicate in a more formalized, intense manner. According to some who were there, Queen Camilla felt quite alone at Clarence House. She had worked very hard to gain public approval since her marriage to Prince Charles, so the quick decline in her status was a huge personal and institutional disappointment for her. Immediate and far-reaching effects on access ceremonial roles and the allocation of representative responsibilities resulted from the crisis's reorganization of domestic politics. The public attitude of King Charles mirrored the emotional toll of the incident. "I have broken her heart, but I cannot break the crown," was a rumored comment that he made, which stoked conjecture about the monarch's inner turmoil and whether or not personal ties would take a back seat to official obligations. Regardless of its veracity, the comment's dissemination served to bolster the story of a ruler who had no choice but to put duty ahead of personal ties. The king's reserved remarks and limited public appearances were seen by some as signs of the difficulties in balancing familial allegiances with institutional responsibility. Camilla was kept in her official capacity, but was practically pushed to the sidelines. Her presence at state occasions was curtailed, and she received fewer invitations to co-host important events. Her public greeting, which included periods of quiet followed by acclaim for Catherine, was seen as a kind of symbolic rejection on occasion. Symbolic gestures can have real-life reputational consequences. Princess Anne wore the sapphire brooch that had belonged to Queen Victoria and Diana to a national memorial service, and the applause she received at that solemn moment showed how much public support she had received. With poise and self-control, William and Catherine weathered the storm. Steering clear of triumphalism, they maintained a stance that was seen by many as bringing people together and establishing stability. Palace watchers started talking about a passing of the torch in the comments, meaning that the focus is shifting from the current generation to the next rather than via a revision to the Constitution. How public confidence is distributed among the senior members of the royal family, the dynamics of informal power within the family, and long-term succession politics are all affected by this reputational mobility. The discomfort remained even after the main things were recovered. There were whispers in the collecting and auction communities that some of the missing items may still be out there, or that lesser-known but important relics might have been sold or transferred privately. The fact that the whole scope of the scandal may never be proven definitively was further shown by each such rumor, which reopened the wound. With the international movement of objects and the possibility of private sales outside of high-profile auction venues, along with the opacity of certain segments of the art and jewelry market, it seemed that complete restitution or definitive accounting would be challenging to achieve with incomplete documentation. The event raised several normative and structural problems about royal families' discretionary power, transparency, and leadership, in addition to the obvious personnel ramifications and reputational harm. Proponents of more relaxed bureaucratic restrictions worried that they would stifle traditional family traditions of sharing and representation, while detractors said the episode demonstrated the need for more transparent, defined standards, controlling the transfer, evaluation, and destruction of objects from institutional collections. There was a resurgence of debate regarding the need for public reporting or independent audits of specific collections, as well as the need for legislative clarification to address the complex legal status of royal objects, which can be classified as either crown property, royal collection holdings, or private possessions. To sum up, the incident, which has been widely referred to as Jewelgate, in the media changed the internal dynamics of the monarchy and left lasting wounds. Queen Camilla's public persona as queen consort was severely weakened by the incident, which she endured as a public disgrace. At a time when institutional stability was highly prized, it was a personal tragedy for King Charles and a reduction of his early reign power. Princess Anne's image as a protector of the royal family's heritage was solidified by this event, which was a painful but necessary declaration of custodial stewardship on her part. For the institution, the crisis brought to light an important lesson. The legitimacy of the monarchy is not determined by the external splendor of regalia, but by the public's faith in custodianship, which is hard-won but readily lost. The perceived treachery cast an enduring shadow on the metaphorical luster of the gems, even if most of the actual pieces were restored to their repositories. The longer-term effects, such as changes in power dynamics, a resurgence of discussions about openness, and a decline in trust in certain officials, will certainly have an impact on the future of the monarchy long after any particular relic has been recovered. Thank you for watching the video. Please let us know your thoughts and goodbye for now.